welcome to the Going Analog podcast, where we usually have an industry guest talking about board games and a topic to discuss. But today you get your favorite two people, me and Shu only. Hi, Shu.
Your favorite and her backup.
Sure, whatever. In any case, we just have a lot of games to get through, right? So we've played a ton of games. There have been a lot that have been sent by publishers, a lot of games we really, really like, and we just wanted to take the time to run through 7 games in, we promise, less than 7 hours today. We have a lot of games, and we're going to talk about something we like and dislike about them. So stay tuned. We are going to be talking about Vale of Eternity, Faraway, Monumental, Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era, Heroes of Might and Magic 3, the board game, Converge, and Evergreen. So we've got a lot to get into, Shu.
Yeah, they're all newish games. Either they came out this year in 2024, or I think the oldest one was about a year ago or so. So they're all really new games that we're really excited to talk about.
Yes, and tell us what you think about them also. So the first thing we're just going to dive right in is Vale of Eternity. So Vale of Eternity is a game published stateside by Renegade and was originally published in Korea under Mandu Games, designed by Eric Hong. So this a sort of like quick drafting card game is essentially about being creature tamers in this magical world that's not Pokemon but other mythological creatures. And on your turn, the players are going to snake draft 2 different creatures every round, and then you have some really interesting choices to make with these creatures. So on your turn, you are going to decide, well, am I going to sell this creature for its value based off of its suit or like type of creature? So different creatures will be worth more or fewer magic stone resources. Or you can tame them and put them into your hand, hoping to summon them later by spending some of those magic stones. A couple really interesting twists to this seemingly simple game just really make it shine. So one aspect is when you have these magic stones that have denominations of 1, 3, and 6 only, you can only hold 4 stones at a time. Every time you go over, you're going to have to discard down, and there's no change. When you go and use these stones, you're going to have to just spend it all and try to be efficient that way. So really interesting choices to make as you're building out these cards. They will combo in super awesome ways if you find some good combos, and there's just a lot of variation there. I've played this game a lot, and every single time we've had very different combos, different people winning. It feels different. We've been really into this game, right, Shu?
Yeah, that stone thing is so cool. It's so weird because it looks like a limitation, and it almost feels initially like, oh, they didn't really think this through. But then,
I totally thought it.
Yeah, it's like, because everything is based around, okay, you have to spend either this specific stone, or you might have to make a choice like, would I buy a 1-cost card for a 6 stone? And that's all I have.
No value.
But there's a lot of cards that combo off of like, hey, if you have this colored stone, or if you use this stone, or you could change these stones to these stones. And so there's this whole economy based just around these set stones that you can have. Again, you can't make change. There's no such thing as exchanging 6 for a 3 and a 3 or anything like that, unless a card gives you that effect. So it's really neat. It's really limiting in that fact, but it creates all these cool kind of combinations. The other big limitation is each round in front of you summon cards. You can only have as many as the current round number. So round 1 card, round 2 cards. So there's this whole play about, okay, do I play cards that will let me take back cards that I previously summoned, or are there cards that will kind of go back into your hand by themselves to free room for others, or you can pay to remove some of your cards. And then that in itself creates new combination possibilities of like, now I get to re-trigger this one-time effect over and over again if I could create the economy to do so. So sort of sneak preview, this is a contender for early contender for my 2024 Game of the Year in this sort of light medium category.
Already, it's only May. It's early May too. So.
I know. I really like this game so much. Yeah, it's just so cool. And everyone we've shown it to, most people we've shown it to really like it. Like we've had, I think I've sold like 2 or 3 copies so far.
What's our kickback on that?
Nothing. No kickbacks, unfortunately. But yeah, they immediately like, I'm buying this. My group's gonna love this game and such. So, what's your one thing that you like most about this game?
I really like the way that it ramps up. So you can play to 10 rounds, or if somebody reaches 60 points, that's the game end trigger final round, right? And so in the beginning, because you have just a few creatures here and there, you're making tiny moves, and you're like, ooh, I can get this card that gives me like 1 point or 2 points, and like, great. But by the later part of the game, like, that's just like crap. That's just like baby points, right? And so you can like make huge swings depending on like how clever you are with your combos and what you can put together. So one of the games I played, our friend Jonathan ended up making like 50 points in one turn. So it was like insane because he made this like beautiful, beautiful combo, and it was just exciting to see, even though I didn't get to play it. So, really fascinating. Lots of weird stuff you can do there. I really like that part.
Yeah. Is it 10 rounds or 8 rounds? Something like that. Anyways.
I thought it was 10.
If I had to pick one thing I liked about the game, it's definitely the combos, because this will be sort of... or anyone who's played any kind of card games, you've done stuff like this before, but they've done it in a very approachable manner and with these limitations, like we mentioned, that are really cool. So I really like the combo system. It's very rewarding. You can be somewhat of a newer gamer and then start to trigger a lot of cool things, and you'll be like, oh man, if I could do this, I could do this, or let me go dig through that discard pile to find this one card that will let me do this and this and this, and then they all start to chain together. It just feels super rewarding for little overhead, right? It's not a collectible card game, but you get a lot of that feel. It's not terribly complicated, but you get that same feel as more complicated games. It's just really elegantly designed.
And the art's great, sort of this like slightly quirky but like cool, bright mythological creature illustration. You get chonky like wooden pieces to enhance the game. Just great.
Yeah, yeah. And then if you have to pick one thing you didn't like about the game, what would that be?
I think, when somebody else is running away with a combo and it's not you, that's a little bit of a feel bad. But, it's like, oh, I still got a combo. That's pretty neat. And because it's card-based, there's, of course, some RNG there, too, right? So even if somebody else draws into, like, a really great combo, they still have to take advantage of it. Or if there are ways to get around stuff, I think, that can ameliorate some bad draws sometimes. But,
yeah. If I had to pick something negative to say or sort of a criticism, I think it's very minor because I absolutely love this game. But if I had to pick something, I think I've already played it a bunch of times too. And I feel like, I'm starting to see, like, I'm starting to be familiar with the deck of cards, right? There's a lot of cards. In the first few plays, you'd be like, there's all these different combinations.
Like 70 unique creatures.
Yeah, and then so I think now, after having played it a while, it's a weird like kind of criticism, but it's like I'm familiar with the deck. I want more content, so I'm really hoping that this game does well enough that they're going to make expansions and introduce more creatures and more monsters, maybe another suit or another type of monster. So I'm looking forward. I hope they do more. I don't think they've announced anything yet, but I'm hoping there's more content on the way.
Yeah, I think. Did it win the Mensa award recently too? Cannot remember, but they might have won them, and so that might help also. I enjoy just the creatures there are, because I've played it a lot, and I feel like they interact in very different ways each time, and depending on when they come out in the draft versus, like what they can combine with. So I haven't found that issue yet.
Maybe it'd be something cool, like where you take out one type of creature completely and substitute in another one, so that it doesn't just add a lot more. It just kind of changes the dynamic. But in any case, it's it's starting to feel a little familiar. But that's because I played it so much. So it's sort of like, oh, well, I played it a lot because I like the game. So it's a weird criticism, but.
So Vale of Eternity, really like that. And our next game is Faraway. So where's our cover for Faraway for people who happen to be watching this on YouTube when we upload this? Faraway is by Johannes Gupi and Corentin Lebray and published by Pandasaurus. So another very small game, tiny box game, just card-based, right? Fascinating game. We got it fairly recently, so thanks to Pandasaurus for sending us a copy. It is, through the whole game, you will only play 8 cards. for the whole tableau. So it's something about like you're in this lost continent of Lula, and these cards are region cards. As you're exploring the regions, you're meeting different citizens in this land, and as you play them out from left to right, you are trying to build a good scoring system. So some of these citizens have quests for you, and so if they are difficult quests to accomplish, like you need all of these symbols, you'll get a lot of points, and the value of this card is higher. But the value of the card is also initiative. So there's a constant balance between like, do I need to play this high number early so I can set up for my quest? Or do I want to play a low number so I can do a better like pick of drafting the cards for the next round, you know? So this concept will, because the real twist here is after you've played out all 8 cards from left to right, you will only trigger and activate the scoring from right to left. So if you had a high scoring card that you needed to like certain symbols for, you had to play those after you played that one card. So there's a lot of like push your luck there a little bit. So it's really sort of trippy and different from a lot of the games that we've played, and we really, really like that, I think.
Yeah, it's such a weird game. It's that scoring backwards. It's not intuitive, but once you play it once, it's like, oh, okay, I get it. It's
a short game, so you could just play that second game immediately.
Super short game. You can play it in about a half hour. So yeah, everyone's like, you have to make all these decisions when you're making the first run through, which is playing the cards from left to right. Right? You have to like, do I put in scoring cards now, not knowing what symbols I'm going to play later that will trigger off of those cards? Am I setting this up correctly, not knowing what cards I'm going to draft? Or do I play a low number because a low number card will let you draft the next card earlier into your hand, maybe beating your opponents with some good cards? Or do you play the next a higher number than the previous card you played, because that also triggers an additional effect, which is to get sanctuary cards, which are additional smaller cards that will either give you symbols that you need or give you additional scoring ways that are kind of permanent. They don't care about the left to right, right to left thing. But then you lay this out. It kind of, I love the cadence of this game too, because there's a kind of build up, right? You're like, okay, I hope this is going to be good. The next card you play, I hope this is going to work. I hope this is going to work. You're just like building up and up and up. It's like, all right, now everyone scores. We flip all the cards over and reveal them backwards. And then you're just like, you're going to see a lot of groaning of like, I did that wrong. I did not play this. I was hoping for this symbol. It never came up. Or you're like, this triggers, and everyone's like, oh, good job there. You managed to make all these cool combos because you got a little bit of luck, but also like you set it up properly. But what a neat game. This is another early contender for my game of the year.
2 of them already.
I wish it was in a similar category, Vale of Eternity, kind of lightish. Like, I wouldn't call them medium weight games. They're like on the light to medium side. So they're in the same category and they're competing in my mind with each other. But it's such a wonderful game because it's so unique and different. Like I don't think anyone's played, like it's likely you've never played anything like this. So it's worth it just to check it out just for something new and refreshing in the card game genre.
For a nice little filler and stuff too. Yeah, you're ready to announce your game of the year already. Blowing your wad all at once.
Don't say blowing your wad.
Yeah,
I don't know. Gross.
Yeah, kids, go find out what that means.
Okay. Okay. Thing that you most like about this game?
That sort of like the tempo of the game is so different, and the decisions that you make are really unique. I also really, really like the art. I think the art is this sort of trippy, hippy dippy sort of design. I don't know. I've never seen art like exactly like that. I'm really bad describing art, evidently.
Art critic.
Yeah, but it's got like real quirky little citizens in the different land, and it's very colorful. And it's just a really eye-catching game too.
Simple art.
Simple art.
Yeah, because the cards are all small and square.
Yes.
Because you need to have enough room to be able to lay out 4 of these in a row. Yeah, for me, the thing I would like most is that, obviously, the mechanic about you're playing cards left to right, but you only trigger them right to left, which, again, creates a different dynamic because when you're, again, going right to left, it's kind of weird, but it's like cards you haven't encountered when you're going right to left do not help you trigger any of these cards before it. So you're playing one way in your mind, but you're activating them a totally different way. It's just really neat. If you had to pick something you didn't like.
I don't No, I really, really like this game. Is there anything I don't like about this game? The lack of pineapples. The lack of pineapples. So it's one of the symbols that score in this game and is the rarest symbol. So they do lay out of these 3 possible symbols that show up on these cards. That is the rarest one, and it's just been a running joke in all of the games that I play where people were like, "Oh no, I need more pineapples," and they're not even pineapples. They're like golden thistles or something, but the stylized look of it make them look like pineapples. We're like, no, I want that pineapple. Well, I have enough pineapples by the end of the game. And so for me, the big thing that I've been like smacking my head over, and I've played it twice, I think, 2-3 times. I tend to miscount one icon, and then I miss like scoring 10-12 points just on this one thing. So every single time I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot this one thing. But anyway.
Yeah. I think for me, it's probably, again, this is why I like the game, is this weird mechanic. For a newer player, maybe a less experienced gamer, they might have, we've seen this, they have a little bit of a hard time kind of wrapping their head around it. Because I ran this at our game party a week and a half ago or so, and then I could see kind of this confused look of like, how does this work? And I kind of there's part of me that's like, well, don't worry, because a lot of people's first games will be just kind of like, oh, the light bulb will kind of go off after you play it once. But you try to explain it to them, and then even as they're doing it, they're just like, wait, that didn't quite work. Like, it's like, again, until they actually see it in action, then they're like, oh, okay, it works. But again, that's the reason why the game is so cool, because it has this really weird, different thing to it. So, yeah, so it's a minor criticism.
Mm-hmm. So if you need a quirky little unique filler, we are loving Faraway.
Yep.
The next game, bigger, is Monumental by...
And you keep talking, because I realize this laptop is not plugged in, so don't stop. I'm going to go make sure.
So the game is Monumental, designed by Matthew Dunstan and published by Funforge. So Monumental is a sort of... deck building tableau builder / area control game about building out your civilization. And Matthew Dunstan has also designed a bunch of other games that we like, especially the Guild of Merchant Explorers, one of our favorites. So
love it.
Very excited for Monumental. So really unique game. As you play different civilizations, like I played China, and there was ancient Egypt, and all sorts of other civilizations, you have a few unique cards. And then you're taking these cards, and on your turn, you are laying them out in a 3x3 grid. So your cards will give you certain resources or different abilities and things like that, but you don't activate a single card at a time. What you're going to do is choose in your grid a row and a column and activate all the cards within that row and column. So really different way to think about a deck builder, because as you acquire new cards that go into your deck that will deal out into this tableau, and you're trying to find the best combination to do your goals as you try to take over the different territories or buy better cards or increase technology, all of these different aspects to this game.
Yeah, it's a civilization builder. Mm-hmm. So like all the classic civilization things you would imagine, like I'm going to build wonders that will give me ongoing powers, or I'm going to research science, because science cards don't clog up that 3x3 tableau. You can trigger them in addition to a normal card. Or expand your military, which lets you move around the board and take over other territories. And the way they do combat is super streamlined. So if you like Civilization or 4X style games, but you're just like, sometimes the combat's a little bit too involved, or what I don't like in a lot of these games is like if you have combat between 2 players, like if you're playing a game of Eclipse, for example, a 4X space game Eclipse, everyone kind of has to stop if 2 players are going to fight, right? So it's kind of, this has very little downtime with regards to that, because if I'm going to take over for combat, take over Christina's territory, it's very simple calculation. If I have more power, more strength, then I'm going to win. And then you don't have no dice rolling, no having to calculate, no her playing defense or anything like that. So streamlined military combat, which I like, because I think military combat and those conflicts are my least favorite part of 4X games. I like the expanding, the researching technologies and things like that. So that's really cool. And then Monumental's also I think one of its appeals is like all the factions have slightly different cards and powers and different things that they can research, and they sell expansions. We didn't play any of the expansions, but the expansions have more races that you can include in the more nations you can include in a set for more variety. So yeah, it's a pretty streamlined 4X game. Like if I say, yeah, with a caveat. So we'll get to that in a second. So if I had to pick one thing I really like about it, it's that 3x3 grid. Like that alone, even I think before I played it, I was like, that's a really cool idea of like having to pick which row and which column to trigger, and you only are triggering those cards. And so like building it out right, that's like really rewarding to be able to be like, not just play all the cards in your hand, but like whatever you drew randomly, but to set it up strategically, but also planning for future turns, because like the cards that you remove and then replace back in there will matter as well. So it's like, do I play this card now? Do I play this card later? Those kind of decisions. So I really like that part of Monumental a lot.
As a deck builder, it worked really nicely. There's definitely ways to cull your deck, but the randomness comes in how you deal it out into that 3x3 grid. So that part was super exciting. I did love the combos. Lots and lots of combos going on between your military resource, being able to do this and get a reward, and then building off of that by activating something else. And it's just like, ooh, combos everywhere. So that was some of my favorite parts of any sort of deck building game.
Yeah. And then I think we're going to say kind of the same thing. If we had to complain about something, one thing we didn't like about the game, the length of the game was kind of bad for me. So this at 4 players, like the last time we played, it took over 2.5, 3 hours to play. But
it's not a super heavy game.
It's not a heavy game. It's not a complex game. But so there's games like deck building games. Typically, you will play a hand of cards and you do everything the cards say, right? So you're gonna like all the actions possible. Like I'm gonna buy stuff, I'm gonna attack stuff, I'm gonna create these combos. All of that happens within a player's turn. But most deck building games, because you're just playing with cards, is pretty quick to do. And there's other more grand games, grander scale games, where to make it kind of efficient, everyone takes one action at a time. Monumental kind of sits between those two worlds, where it's a deck building game. You have to take all your actions, but that makes the game take a long time because there's so many different things you can do and different choices to make. It's not as streamlined as a normal card-based deck building game. So you have a lot of decisions to make. So there's a lot of times where there's 3 people kind of waiting for one person, just like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to combo this,
and
this
that
will let
person's
me
having
build
a
this.
great time with their combos. But then when they're done, it's somebody else's turn to combo, and then you're like sitting there, do I pull out my phone? Like, do I play another game? So I think my thing that I did not like was at 4 players specifically, that's just too much downtime, because you can't even like plan your turn that much. You can. You're like, ooh, I'm probably going to trigger this row and column, but then you're still waiting for the other people. And then if they take over a territory, or if they buy the card you wanted, then you're like, ooh, do I reconfigure which row and column I want to activate? So I think, we haven't tried 2-player yet, but I feel like that would be pretty ideal, where you don't have to wait too long and you're still getting those crunchy combos.
Yeah, it's designed for up to 4 players, but we all decided, like, I don't think we want to play this 4-player anymore. Neat idea, but just like, because you have to wait 3 people to do everything we just described later in the game, right? In the beginning of the game, not that big a deal, but as the game goes on and you have more to do and you get more complex cards, and the map situation is really tight because everyone's all right on top of each other, then there are a lot of decisions to be made and a lot of downtime for that.
My other thing I didn't like was this game is called Monumental, and we build all these monuments and wonders, and somebody forgot to tell us that we could put them on the board, which would have very much changed at least the territory control part of the game.
Yeah, when we were putting it away.
Monumental.
Yeah, the first time we played, when we start putting everything away. I forgot who said, "What are those cards over there?" And I'm like, oh crap! When you build a monument in your tableau, you also put it on the map, which provides 1 defense for that territory.
I thought it was like 3. Was it just 1 defense?
I think it's 1 defense, but
anyway,
we forgot
it. Helped.
So, yeah.
So yeah, that would have been interesting, because it was called Monumental, so maybe they should figure more broadly in the game. But a fascinating game, really nice puzzle to that game. Just wouldn't play it at 4 again. And then we had a big boy after this. Elder Scrolls Beyond Betrayal of the Second Era, but published by Chip Theory Games, designed by Josh J. Carlson and Michael Gerns. This is a really, really big game that was on Kickstarter, I think last year, I want to say. I don't remember exactly when. And we got a cool demo of it during BGCon a while back. So
Dice Tower West.
Dice Tower West. So sorry. Dice Tower West, thanks to Andrew from Chip Theory Games. And we love Elder Scrolls. So this is based off of Elder Scrolls Online. And we played a little bit of that, but we were mostly I was mostly very into Skyrim. Played a ton of Skyrim together. Shoes played a whole bunch of other Elder Scroll games.
So this is our fandom, just so to give a bit of context with how much we know Elder Scrolls. We played Elder Scrolls Online a little bit. We put 188 hours into Skyrim the first time through. A ton of hours into it second time through. I've played Oblivion, I played Morrowind, and I played even Daggerfall. So all but one in the series. Big fan of the series. It's a fantasy medieval setting. And then in this, if you've played or are familiar with Too Many Bones by Chip Theory Games, it has a similar system. It has kind of the soul of Too Many Bones, which is basically we're adventurers. We're on a cooperative team, and we go on these. We have an overworld map where we're deciding where we want to go. In this, it's an open world, unlike Too Many Bones. It's like, do we want to go to this small campsite, or do we want to go to this small town? What do we want to do once we get to that town? Do we want to go to this dungeon? We're given a mission and we need to travel, but travel takes time and we need to budget that in. Like, can we get to do all these side things in time before we get to our main quest? So you have to make all these decisions together as a group. We all have different classes and different races that all give us unique powers, and then we all have our own dice sets that not so much for rolling, but for setting different dice faces to trigger different actions or attacks and so on. There's a cooldown system for, like, when you use certain dice, you can go out of play for a little bit, so you have to manage that properly. And then when you're in the dungeon or when you're in a battlefield, you have these sort of poker-like chips that have like our units and then the enemies' units with their attacks and their stats and their ranges and all that kind of stuff on it, like Chip Theory Games tends to do. And then you have those encounters, and you might pick up some treasure, you might pick up some loot, you can level up your characters, get more XP, and do all kinds of things. So very, very much a cooperative RPG.
The build out of the character in the beginning, very much like Elder Scrolls 2, where you have a combination of the character class with the sort of race or background of it, and then together they combine to give you some unique sort of build out skills. And one really interesting thing about it on your player mat, when you have these different skills based off of your character, there's like 2 skills on either side, and you have to decide a balance between, when you increase one of them, that sort of limits how far you can increase the opposite one. So really interesting balance there, so you don't get like super crazy on any one sort of
you can't just max out all your skills. It's some are directly opposed to each other.
And we're getting more XP. You can unlock more dice and more skills based off of those dice from your character. That part was super, super fun and exciting. We probably spent a long time on that too. The initial build out.
Yeah, we don't have the game here with us because it's not out yet. We only played this demo.
And it was a prototype.
It was a prototype, and it was we played for almost 4 hours, 4 of us, like you, me, Phil, and his friend, and then our Andrew from Chip Theory was kind of watching and facilitating it. So it's helpful to have someone there who can like tell you this is how this works, right? Like just teaching you and running the game for you. But it took us a long time, and we didn't complete half of one scenario. We did take a long time to get everything set up, to decide what we want to do, and we're kind of just relaxing and kind of chilling through this whole thing. So it is a long game. So this is the kind of thing, I'm not sure what the final MSRP is going to be, but
it's huge,
you're getting a lot of game, because like if we're playing, let's say even at 4 hours, we went too long, and that should have been closer to 2.5 hours or so for half of one scenario, and there's multiple scenarios, and there's different choices you can make in the overworld. You could link scenarios together for a larger campaign. There's so much to play here that's going to be really exciting, and you can make different characters. There's a whole bunch of characters that we didn't even touch upon. So it was just like there was a lot to explore with just my character, and like I wasn't even close to leveling up even halfway to the max, and there's like, oh man, there's all these cool skills that I would unlock if I play this enough. But I'm like, but there's also a dozen more characters that I want to play and check out and see what they all do. So very much like Too Many Bones, where all the characters play very differently from each other, but not as crazy as Too Many Bones. I think this is probably more streamlined.
Yeah, which is what I liked about it. So it definitely, we've only played Too Many Bones once. Yep. And despite Shu owning the whole thing for years and years and years, we played it once finally and had a good time. But I think that the Elder Scrolls implementation of similar sort of combat system seems a lot more smoothed out to me. So I found it pretty straightforward. There's like lock picking and stuff like that's thrown in, which is sort of fun too when you're getting treasures and things like that. But everything seems to make sense and it seems pretty streamlined. The one thing I didn't like, as Shu mentioned, was it did take us a really long time, but I feel like that was probably our fault. When we were talking to Andrew, who's run lots of these demos, he mentioned, yeah, we're an outlier. It normally doesn't take that long to run through that much of the scenario. So I think we were just very excited by all the ways we could build out the character and probably taking too much time to decide on some of those build outs when it was just a demo. So
yeah, I think same two things for me. Like I my favorite thing is like all the different characters and how differently they play. The thing that was more like for me, like, and this is a plus for other people. It's just like there's a lot of game here. Like for our kind of gaming lifestyle of where we play a lot of different games, it might be too much game in one package, right? Even though we love Skyrim, if I were to invest a lot of time into one campaign, I think I would want it to be this one though, because I like the IP so much,
and the systems just clicks for me, I think. So it'd be really exciting if we were able to like really build out that character and make them super powerful too. So it'd be very rewarding.
So I think if you're comparing the two, Too Many Bones would probably be better if you're more like, I want to just play standalone games more, like in 2-3 hours I'm done. And then next time you play a totally different game with very, very different characters that are mechanically much more different from each other than they are in Skyrim or Elder Scrolls. And then, but Elder Scrolls, if you want a deeper, richer campaign in this kind of almost like a living world where, because again, you have this overworld map, these locations you could go back to and revisit, and you kind of get to learn this world and get familiar with this world. And you're going to get way more hours, I think, out of Elder Scrolls than you will Too Many Bones. Yeah.
I wonder, because one of my favorite things that got us super into Skyrim for a really long time was just all those like super weird random side quests that can happen to you. Like we once got overly drunk in a tavern and woke up on the opposite side of the map and had to figure out what happened. I wonder if those are things that could build out if you're playing that campaign where there's like a lot more personality to the narrative. But we only had like a short demo, so interested to find out. The next game is a big chunky boy also. So we also played Heroes of Might and Magic 3, the board game. And of course it has to be 3 because this is based off of the PC game Heroes of Might and Magic, which is a series, but everyone agrees that Heroes of Might and Magic 3 is the best one. And so it is huge. I don't even know how much it weighs at this point, but if you are watching on YouTube, you can sort of see that it dwarfs both of us. It's a huge box, so much game to it, and it is so nostalgic because Heroes of Might and Magic 3 is a PC game, came out in the 90s at some point.
Ooh, yeah.
It's been a while. It's been a long time. We love playing that game. We would play it hot seat, just the two of us, and play it co-op or like against each other's occasionally. But there's so much you can do. So in the PC game, typically you start at your castle and you are exploring the nearby area to get resources and build out, and then you meet all of these creatures that you might have to conquer, things like that, and then you might run into other heroes or other villains that you're trying to conquer, and different scenarios have different objectives. There's mainly the main map build out as you're exploring, and then if you are doing combat, then it becomes sort of this hex-based battle that's a separate phase. So we were super curious how that would translate to the board game.
Yeah, this is Heroes of Might and Magic 3 specifically is one of the top 5 video games, PC games for me of all time. Played it for years, long after it's like long and done, and they're on like Heroes 5, 6, 7.
Just go back to 3.
I still go back to 3. I try those, and I'm like 3's still the best one. And then the game makers, the board game makers, clearly knew that because this is the one they chose to make a board game out of. But yeah, so you will explore a map, you put out the tiles, and then I'll say there's several ways to play it. You can play solo, the campaign solo. You can play 2 to 3 player co-op, or you can play 2 to 3 player skirmish, no more than that. And there's probably a good reason for that, which we'll get into in a second. When you put out the tiles, within one hexagon, there are 7 smaller regions in there that might contain different artifacts or different special buildings to go visit. You might encounter other castles, or you might encounter neutral creatures. So if I went and fought even though if I'm playing, so we've only played this once, it's a huge game. Christina and me and our friend Dan, who's also a big fan of the PC game, we all played because we all had this nostalgia and we were excited to play the board game. And this box, by the way, that Christina mentioned and we just showed on camera is the all-in box. Like the normal base game box is not this big, but I didn't care how the game played. I'm like, I love this franchise so much, I'm just going to get it all and deal with it later. So
this is published by Archon Games, forgot to mention that, and designed by Kamil Bialkowski and Jakub Oleksik. Yeah.
probably close enough.
Something.
Yeah, so you go on and explore these areas. There's a kind of fog of war. Some tiles aren't flipped over until you actually reach them. You have only so much movement and action points that you can spend a day. And then at its core, it's a deck building game as well. So your deck will offer you like, okay, if I learn spells, or I've upgraded my guy, or I have certain skills, they're all comboed and work together through the cards. So that it might be like, okay, I encountered this group of imps, now I go to a separate map. And then this game offers the hex map like the PC game, but they also, like the normal game is just like more of a grid, simplified, where you put the cards of the unit. So like, okay, my vampires are represented by a card on this board, and they have miniatures as well if you've upgraded to that package. So, and they all behave just like they do in the PC game, like almost literally, right? Like
the harpies have a way to avoid retaliation, or they can fly back from where they came from.
They'll fly, attack, and come back. Medusas can kind of freeze people temporarily, and things like that. The only thing this doesn't do that the PC game does is like where you could build armies of like hundreds of a certain cheap unit type. It's not, you can't really do it. It's unwieldy for a board game to do those. So
I want hundreds of minis.
Well, the way they do it is like, if you have one side of a unit card, it's a few. If you flip it over, it's a pack. It's a more powerful version, and there's theoretically more of them, and they have more health and things like that. But they really simplified the combat that way to make sense for a board game. So from a pure Heroes of Might and Magic fandom point of view, I think the game did a really, really good job.
Got the same heroes, like Solomir, the like genie thing, and then while we were playing the game, I made sure to like look up a Spotify playlist for the Heroes of Might and Magic 3 soundtrack. It was great. Put the battle music on when the battle was going. It was like
so
awesome.
Nerdy and so great for us fans. Yeah. And then one thing I did make a mistake of was because I mixed in all the different map tiles and played, and then some of them weren't in the rule book, and I was like, wait, where's this? It was like, because it was part of an expansion, and I had to look elsewhere to see what this one thing does. Like, what's a magic well? I forgot what it was, but anyways, there's like different buildings that you could visit or different structures you could visit to do things that I had to look through it. Which leads me to, well, let's talk about what did you like about the game?
Heroes of Might and Magic 3. It felt like I was playing the game, but smoothed out for a board game. So definitely gave me all the right feels for Heroes, and it was very fun to revisit that in like a tangible, physical way, because the original PC game has a lot in common with board games too, like the way that it moves and stuff. So
yeah, I agree. That's my favorite thing about it too. Like, I actually, after we're done playing, I'm like, I'm not sure I would take the time to teach this game, and we'll cover more of this in our what we don't like part, to a non-Heroes of Might and Magic 3 player. It's great, it's big, but it's sort of like you appreciate it so much more if you're a fan. And we know enough fans, I'm like, I'm just going to, I would just show them, and I would just play it with the people I've already played it with. But even down to like, one of the appeals, I don't think you mentioned this, but the one of the appealing parts of the PC game to me is you build out your own home castle, right? You could like, okay, when I get enough money, you go out and collect resources, or you collect resource generating structures. And then when you built enough, you could like, okay, now you have to make decisions. Do I build a mage tower to provide more spells? Do I build this structure that will produce these specific units, right? Like stable will now start to produce Pegasus on a weekly basis. Pegasi. Or this structure will give me walls and archery towers for defense of my castle. This thing will provide more gold, right? You have to make those decisions. And then there's set with the all-in box. The base game, I think, comes with 3 or 4 factions. You could buy, I think 4, because you could buy 3 additional ones. We got the all-in box that had all of them, but each town is different. Like, so my town is unique to that faction. Yeah. So if I think you played the dungeon faction. I played the necromancers. Dan played the tower faction. All our buildings were very different, and you would take a little tile, put it on your little player board to represent that building is now built. It's super cool. It's like, what decisions, how do I want to upgrade my town? And then my hero's out dancing around the map and fighting different things. Super cool, ambitious game that's very, very faithful to the board game. And like, as much as I think I could ask for, like of course, this deck building, the original PC game wasn't a deck building game.
The deck building was clever. How they institute that. I really like that, because both your spells and sort of like cards that affect battle, but also your like skills. Are they skill cards?
Yeah. So like everyone has base 4 attributes. Your attack, your defense, your powers, which is like your spell power, your knowledge. Those translate differently into the board game.
It's a similar feel, though.
Yeah, but it could you would play like an attack card would help you enhance other cards and things like that for attack and such. So again, it's like not 1-to-1, but like pretty close. So, which leads us to what we didn't like, and I'm gonna go first because I had to deal with this. This is the worst rule book I've ever read. I hated it. I was like constantly frustrated and confused, and I was like, why didn't they would mention or reference a concept that they haven't yet introduced or taught to you yet until later. Things aren't quite in the areas where they aren't intuitive in terms of how the things are laid out or organized. I just hated this rulebook. It was so bad. I went on Board Game Geek to research more into this. I saw that the community, there's one person, and then he worked with the community to redo this rulebook. And then I saw he had a huge manifesto about why he did it. He's just like, here's all these problems. I'm like, yes. So they redid it. They had a giant GitHub repository of notes from the community. They fixed a bunch of things, made it make sense. And then as I was reading through that version of the rulebook, I'm like, yes, that's the thing I was missing. That's the thing I couldn't find. And that makes so much more sense. But our printer's broken, so I'm like reading this through the iPad. So bottom line is our first game took 3 of us almost 8 hours to play. Some of that is because I put in the expansion tiles, which like this made the game bigger than just the base game. We did pick the most basic scenario that they recommended that you start with. So I didn't go like, let's pick a really crazy scenario. It was a small map. There's a lot of like, okay, I know where this is in a normal rule book. Can I find it there? Can I scroll through my iPad to get to page 35 and find this thing?
You just need to be faster at scrolling.
No, it was, if you've read the forums on Board Game Geek, you'll know that I'm not alone in this. It was just absolutely awful. So it took way too long, and it got to the point where when we're done, no one had a bad time. It just took way too long. 8 hours. Like someone on our social media when I posted about this, someone I think on Threads, one of our followers said they only got through 3-4 hours and they were like not even halfway done, and they were like they quit. They didn't know it was going to take that long. They couldn't do it for another 3-4 hours. So it's definitely out there. It's definitely a problem, and it's to the point where I don't think I would ever play this game, even with other Heroes of Might and Magic 3 fans. Like, I had a lot of friends when I posted about... Yeah, they were like, oh, I love the PC game. Like, can I play this with you? Can I play this with you? I'm like, I don't want to teach it to you. I'm just going to play with Dan or Christina again, and maybe not even Dan. Maybe just Christina one-on-one, because
Yes, I beat Dan.
It'll be a
I live
shorter,
here.
more manageable game. We both know the rules. It'll be, because here's the other thing. Every time you get into combat, it's always between two parties.
Yes.
So it's either between you and a neutral creature on the map, or you and another player. There's always another player who's not participating, and then they have to wait out this potentially 10, 15-minute battle. Maybe not 15 minutes, but like 10-minute battle where you're playing what cards and deciding what to do and attacking. If you're playing a neutral against a neutral character, the opponent takes care of that.
That's still somebody sitting out.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't think I'd want to play this even 3 players now.
So if you want to play it with Shu, you will have to learn the game yourself, is the takeaway from that. But yeah, it was very, very long. I would say, also, like, I had, I posted a picture about it, and then somebody asked, like, ooh, Dungeon Crawl, is this fun? So I had to ask them, have you played Heroes of Might and Magic 3, the PC game? And they hadn't. So I was like, I can't recommend it. I think the gameplay is fun because there's just some really great attraction to the hero system in general. It's just so satisfying to build out your castle and your units and go battle and stuff. So it is fun, but I don't think that the burden of learning it is worth it if you don't have the nostalgia for it. So if you have the nostalgia for it, yeah, go ahead and learn it and see if you can convince Shu to play with you. But I don't think it's worth it if you've never played Heroes before.
Yeah, I think that's well said.
Yeah. So, but we loved it. So gotta try it at least one more time. So next we have a way smaller game, going from a gigantic Heroes 3 to this small set of card games from Button Shy, designed by our friend Peter C. Hayward, called Converge. So there are 3 different sets currently available for Converge. We have Catalysts of Change, Sparks of Hope, and Engines of Progress. Each of these wallet games is a self-contained game, so you can play it. It's a 2-player 1v1 game where there are 3 factions per wallet, essentially. And so these 3 factions come out in this deck where you are trying to play cards. Each turn of this route of a game is very, very quick. Your choice when you get that card is you're either going to play it into your tableau as one of your in your faction, essentially, or you could play it for the other team if you wanted, for various reasons. You can also play it in the middle as a goal, but you have to watch out because after every turn, which is 1 card played from each player, we evaluate the goals to see if anybody has outscored the other. Right?
Yeah, they're common goals for both.
Common
if you
goals
play
for
it,
both
it still
people.
works for the other player.
Mm-hmm. And then the third choice is you can play this card for its ability, right? You would discard it, you play it for its ability that can twist the game in lots of ways. It could swap cards, like the goal cards and a card from your hand. It could take a card from the discard back, There's all these different ways for it to interact. But what's really smart about it is for each of these 3 factions,
They're called skill set. We're the factions.
Oh, we're the factions.
There's
sorry.
3 skill
There's 3
sets
skill
per
sets.
game.
So they could be alchemists, or they could be healers, or different things like that. They're all numbered 1 through 6 in their own skill set, and then the numbers are the same. And for each faction, the ability is the same. So you don't have to parse through like every card is super unique, but they interact in really, really fascinating ways. So once you've learned a skill set, then okay, from now on this could do this ability, and there's all these different ways to, like, in this constant quick struggle, to outsmart your opponent, basically.
Yeah, it's a really smart game for what it is, just the 16 or 18 cards or so.
Yeah.
It's like literally really quick. I play a card, you play a card, and then we see if anyone has won that round. And then if you have the artifact and I win, I take the artifact. If I win again, so if you win basically back to back, then you win the whole round, and it's best 2 out of 3 rounds. So it's really fast in that way, but a little bit of analysis paralysis, because when you're sitting there, it's like, okay, Christina just played this move that if I don't react to it, she's going to win. Then there are those moments where you're like, okay, what do I do? What do I figure out? And it gives you so many things to think about, because you have 3 cards. They all have different discard powers. Or can I change the goal and make it so Christina doesn't win? Or that we at least tie and move on to another set of turns and things like that. So it's just so simple with really deep decisions to make. It's just, I think it's out of the games I played from Peter, it's my favorite design by far. It's just, well, I'll probably play French Toast a lot more than I'll play this game because it's one of my favorite party games.
But yes.
But this is just such a smart design, and I'm just really impressed with, like, man, you just like so many cool decisions to make it for just to play one card. It's like one card can mean everything.
So
in this
much
game.
in 18 cards, and although there's like all of this a little bit of analysis where you have to figure out like, oh wait, what's the best move for me here? It is also a limited choice set, which really helps because again, you only have 3 cards to choose from, and so there's like limited ways to take advantage of that. But when you do, it's really, really rewarding. We don't normally play 2-player games that often, but we really, really like this. And one day we played through all 3 sets because we were having such a good time and wanted to see all the different skill sets. When you play them all too, you can recombine them in different ways and have 3 different factions and play a sort of more unique game than the.
You take skill sets from different sets and combine them.
Yeah, so there's a lot of potential there, and even within one set, there I can see it playing out super differently every single time. Because obviously we played, usually 3 games per round to see who would win, or 3 rounds per game.
That's 2 out of 3.
That's
First
2
to 2.
So, yeah.
So if you like one thing about the game, what is it?
I really liked how quick it was to learn, but also the like agonizing decisions. So it really strikes that really good balance, the push-pull of how you want to play those.
I love my agonizing decisions in board games. Yeah, I like that too. I like that you feel really smart if you can make the right move, but there's so many things that it just feels like we're just taking big swings at each other, right? It's like Christina will play something that feels like she's won it. She's basically has won it with that card. And then I have to play a card to like, can I counter that or change the conditions to where now it's no longer is she not winning, but maybe I'm winning, It's just like really swinging in great directions like that, but in a very satisfying way that doesn't feel cheap because we both have access to such a small.
It feels very balanced because it's not like I'm playing one skill set. They're all available in the deck. So eventually we all have access to these powers. And it's like, how do you twist it to your advantage? So.
Yeah. So I like the one card feels so significant and you could do so much, but it doesn't feel cheap ever because the other person's just going to do the same thing back to you, right? It's like, I got it. Like, nope, she's going to play something really big and completely changes everything. And I'm on a completely different path to victory from just 5 seconds ago. So I really like that about the game.
And the different factions, their abilities, very different each time. So skill sets very different each time. So really loved exploring those and seeing how they might combine in different ways when I combine them in a different way.
If you had to pick something you didn't like about the game, what would that be?
I don't know. I think it's I've only played it, I guess, each set once, and I see myself carrying it around a lot for travel because they're so tiny, like most button shy games are. I don't really have an issue with this game.
Yeah. I think it is that where it's almost like that checkmate scenario or checkmate scenario where it's like, oh, I think she's got this and I don't think there's a counter, but then I could still take a long time to get to that conclusion. And there was one time where I'm like, I evaluate every card. I'm like, does this card help me? Does this goal help me? Does this do this? Does this do this? And then there's some cards that might say, activate the power of this other card somewhere. And so you have to look at these other cards and say, will any of those help me? And I run through that exercise and like, I think you won. So kind of like, I think that very, very last step before you give up or you know that you can't counter it and you have to let the other person win can take a while if you're stubborn and you're like, I don't want to give up. I don't want to give this to her. And let me evaluate
Just let me win.
Every
it's
possible
fine.
move.
It's fine.
Yeah. There was literally one time where I'm like, I don't have it. I give up, and I would just like let her look because then it becomes kind of a fun puzzle of like, okay, do you have anything? And she's like, do you officially give up? You've given up. You lost this round. I'm like, yes. And so she'll look at my cards and try to help me. She's like, yeah, you lost. But it's kind of
There
fun.
was once where you just hadn't noticed this one card. It could have stayed alive.
Yeah.
Don't know if you would have
There's one time I made a mistake and gave up too early. There's like one specific move. But anyways, there's a lot to think about, but really cool game in such a small package.
Yes. Really like this game. Great job, Peter. He did not pay us to say any of that. So
Well,
he did give us a free
he
copy.
gave us these
Thanks.
games, so
Which we're gonna use.
Yeah.
And our final game is, I guess, older compared to the other ones we're looking at. This is Evergreen, and this is published by Horrible Games, designed by Hjalmar Hawk. So the designer of this game also designed Photosynthesis, which has been an ongoing bone of contention game between me and Shu. Every time we try to purge, he always pulls out that one game of Photosynthesis, and I'm like, nope, push it back in because I don't want to sell it because it's beautiful. It's about photosynthesis, sort of. So the original photosynthesis game was more of like an economy game with all of these trees with like 4 different sizes and acorns, and they would grow in different ways and block the light from all these different directions. And I acknowledged it was not the best game, but I liked having it in our collection for a very long time. So I would
It's a really pretty box.
Beautiful box.
Like this one tree standing in this grove with a beam of sunlight shining on it, and it looks pretty on the table because you make all these 3D cardboard trees of different varying heights and colors, so it looks really neat.
But it's actually an abstract economy game. So, but I was finally ready to sell it because of Evergreen. So from the same designer, I think this just takes some of the main ideas from photosynthesis, where you are scoring off of how much light these different trees can absorb, and then also how big your forest is. So those are some of the 2 main aspects of scoring in Evergreen, the newer game, and it just smooths it out so much. So instead of like 4 different tree sizes, whatever it was, now you only really have 2 sizes. So you have like a seedling and then a small tree and a big tree, and you build that out onto a double layer board where you're just sort of laying them out into this forest, essentially. Way smoother gameplay, I would say. There are cards now that sort of designate on your turn. You're going to draft a card that will give you a biome that you can grow some stuff into, like maybe some new seedlings or grow a small tree into a big tree, whatever you need to do. And then it comes with like a secondary effect. And the cool part about drafting that card is you can use do its regular growth in that biome, but the secondary ability, when you take that, also powers up that secondary ability. So as you maybe build out a bush, like the first time you build a bush, you get 1 bush, and later you might be able to plant 2 bushes as your additional action. So it rewards sort of building a small little system also, and bushes will help you build a bigger forest without collecting light. So there's like a really interesting way to build out this tree system that you have going, where you need to watch out for as the sun sort of goes from different angles, like can we maximize the amount of light that you're collecting, because that's points. And then I also want to grow a big forest, which is another major source of points per round.
And isn't one of the bonuses just points too, I think.
What?
Anyways, there's a lot of ways to do.
Oh yeah, one of the secondary
Yeah,
effects.
one of the secondary actions. Yeah. So in photosynthesis too, if you're familiar with that game, there's the sun is represented. Everyone's building on a common board, and then you're moving the sun around, and it's different things will block different people.
And your trees may block other people's trees.
And there's like 6 different positions for the sun. That's one of the things I didn't like about photosynthesis, because I'm like, it's kind of hard to plan and strategize because different things will be kind of out of your control. But or in Evergreen, you have your own board that you're working on, so you don't have to worry about what other people are kind of doing. You're just competing to outscore them. I think that's a great change. And then now having the sun in only 4 positions around the board also is a great change, because it's much easier to kind of figure out what's going to block what in the cardinal directions versus like 6 different positions of like rows and diagonals and all this kind of stuff. So it's streamlined, but the scoring's better. It's just I think it's a better game overall. And it looks very different too, but very cute in its own way, because they're just like little tree kind of wooden pieces, wooden meeples, little what are they called before trees? The seedlings and the bushes and stuff. So it looks really abstract, but kind of in a cute, friendly manner with a really light, kind of minimalist art. So I really like how this game looks, and it plays so much better. So I would definitely recommend this over photosynthesis if you're looking for this kind of forest growing economy kind of base game.
Yeah. Another really cool aspect about it is when you draft the card for your main action, there will always be one final card left over, and that tree, that that card is going to go into a fertility zone where it's a point multiplier also at the end for any large trees in those biomes. They will count for however many fertility symbols are in that biome. So that adds a really interesting aspect too when you're drafting, like, do I want to leave this biome hoping that it'll end in the fertility zone, or do I take it away because I want it, you know? So there's all these tiny little twists that are not, you know, making it much heavier, but add some fun strategy to it and plays really smoothly.
Yeah. So, one thing that you liked about the game?
I really like the trees. No, I'm just the whole game, like the way that the scoring system works makes a lot more sense, I think. And then the planning for it is a lot more intuitive. So I just think it's a much more elegant, smooth game now. And I finally gave up photosynthesis.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep, I agree. Same thing. I think it's a better game, as I said, and it's very smooth. And I think even if you know nothing about photosynthesis, right? It's an older game.
Sure. Ignore it. Don't worry about it. You don't need to play it, honestly.
On its own, it's a good, solid game. Mm-hmm. It's like it plays really well, and it's just very satisfactory to play out and lay everything out.
So, love everything.
Okay, thing that you didn't like about the game?
What do I not like about this? I played it on BGA first for quite a few times.
Board Game Arena.
Board Game Arena with Eric of Eric Play. What's Eric playing? And it was like, you know, the big thing there was I didn't bother reading the rules for a while. So so I sort of learned the game by playing and making mistakes and stuff. But that I don't really have a negative to that, because the more I played, the better I did get, but it wasn't too samey each time. So I did play it a ton on Board Game Arena and in person now. And it's been sort of unique depending on how the cards come out. So I still enjoy it, even though I didn't know the rules when I first played it.
Okay. So that's interesting, because my initial criticism, I think would be, would the map feel too sameness after a while? Because your map, the different biomes that Christina mentioned, they all, it's not symmetrical. They all kind of fit together in different ways. And I wondered immediately, as soon as I saw this game, like, would this map start to feel kind of samey after a while?
Because you can only do your main growing action in the biome that you draft a card from. So the way the cards come out changes your build every single time, I think. And you can also have a different variation where instead of starting with the sun in the same position for everybody, they can start in different directions, and that can add some even more variety to how you build it out.
Cool.
So Evergreen from last year, I think, but worth it if you are into tree growing and a nice, elegant game design. Cool. So we managed to get through 7 games pretty well, I think.
Yeah, in about an hour.
In about an hour, so not 7 hours. Great job, us. Thanks so much for listening. If you have questions, you know, reach out to us. We're on all the things. We're on X, Twitter, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, so however you want to reach out. Blue Sky also, yeah. Ask us about these games, tell us what you like, and thanks for listening. Thanks to our favorite editor, Mike Zipkin, and now you can stop listening and go play a game.
Bye.